Hello, everybody. My name is Gerald Donald, and you are listening to the Reclaim Your Voice podcast, where we help to set the stage for your voice to be at a place where you're singing at your fullest potential, where you are really living your dreaming, using your voice the way that you know you always were called to. It's been a little bit of a while. I kind of took a little bit of a break, but I'm back with some more information for you that will help you to really set the stage for your voice to be no longer unsure in its use, or for you as a singer to no longer be unsure in your singing, but to be unforgettable. So just a little bit of a recap for those of you that are listening to this for the first time. This podcast is for you if you are singing every week but you lose your voice after you finished. This podcast is for you if you are trying to better your singing but you're finding a plateau in your practice and you're not getting better. Yeah, this podcast is for you if you've always struggled with building confidence in your own voice and you aren't quite sure if you'll be able to hit the notes if you have, hit the goals that you have for your music, and also if you secretly believe that you cannot sing. Right. So this week, I wanted to start to kind of dig into a little bit of what I did in a little bit of a bonus episode. What I would have done is I would have posted the bonus episode right there in the Reclaim Your Voice podcast for you, because I recently turned 30 and there were some lessons that I was pulling apart from my 20s that I felt would be conducive to everyone that follows me, and just in general for people who are going through their 20s. But I realized that a lot of the things that I was saying in those lessons that I gained, there were 5 of them, I realized that there was an opportunity to actually learn on a deeper level. And the second lesson that I actually spoke about was basically about not being honest with yourself, and how not being honest with yourself can actually cause a danger. And so that actually evolved itself into today's topic, which is the dangers of numbing your singing dream. It's funny because it's like, when it comes to our culture, we're actually very much used to numbing ourselves to any type of pain or any type of challenges that are causing us pain. And especially as singers, as creative people, when we find that we're not necessarily progressing, what we can often do is, first of all, we can try to work harder, but then when we find ourselves working harder and not really getting ourselves to where we want to be, we can either completely give up entirely or go numb. And I wanted to shock you awake, especially for those of you that watch me to live vicariously through me. And I don't say that in a proud way, but it's more, a lot of you watch and a lot of you listen to this podcast simply because you are trying to live out your singing dream and you're living it through somebody else. And that's you, what I wanted to do today is kind of wake you up to the reality that you're numbing yourself. And the reason why we want to do that is so that you can actually start to dream again, right? So I wanted to give you 5 dangers of numbing yourself to your singing dream. And a few of these are really applicable for other areas, but we're going to specifically relate it to singing, okay? So the first danger of numbing yourself to your singing dream is that you go to coping mechanisms. And this actually really relates to an actual conversation that I was having with somebody a week ago who was finding themselves they were finding themselves running to substances in order to actually cover the fact that they actually wanted to get better in their singing, and they weren't able to actually find the route in order to get there. And for me, I was just wondering, I was just like, really? Substance abuse can substance abuse really be a result of you not going for your dreams and actually doing what you want to do in life? Actually, yes, right? But substance abuse is only one of many different coping mechanisms that we have. And the thing is, coping mechanisms, when we use that term, we often run to the substance abuse and the things that are a little bit more on the extreme side. But the reality is, a lot of us cope by working harder and working more in something that we are not necessarily passionate about. A lot of us get angry and don't even know why. There are a whole bunch of things that we can do to cope with with the reality that we're not pursuing our singing dream. And the thing about coping mechanisms is that they give us what they do is, of course, just like we're saying in the title of this podcast, is that they help us to go numb. And when we go numb, what it allows us to do is just simply the pain that we would feel in the fact that we're not getting to where we want to be vocally. We're practicing using YouTube warm-ups and not getting to the place that we want to be. Like all of those things that we're doing. Because there's a pain in us not getting to the place where we want to be in terms of our singing, there is what we do is we run to those coping mechanisms to flatten out the line, so we don't feel anything. So for a lot of people who are not necessarily getting better and are actually gigging, are actually doing are actually using their voices, what they'll do is they'll continue to use their voice, but they will, because they're numb, they won't ever feel the fact that they're actually not progressing. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a future, as we go along in these 5 dangers. But the first danger of numbing yourself to your singing dream is that you go to these coping mechanisms. And the coping mechanisms are really a replacement for you, for you actually flourishing in your singing dream, loving what you're doing, sending your message to your audience and allowing them to feel what you feel when you create your art. But when we're not able to do that, we end up going to coping mechanisms as a way to numb ourselves. Okay, so that's the first danger. The second danger is related to the first. You actually start thinking that your coping mechanisms are the real you and start to forget about singing. So here's the thing. It's like it's very scary because we live in a world where we are able to be unapologetically ourselves. We don't necessarily need to do as much apologizing if we don't fit the status quo. And there are great things that come with that. It means that people that are not necessarily conventional can be themselves completely. But it also means that when we are operating in a toxic way, we actually don't have anybody that is holding us accountable for our toxicity. Right? Because it's masked under something that's a coping mechanism. And when these coping mechanisms are things that we've had for so long. So things like, maybe spending an extra hour on video games or scrolling, or, going on Netflix and just binging that entire season of a series or an entire series, right? When we do these things, because there is such a culture of, going numb, right? And as well as a culture that's just like, that doesn't really have a true sense of accountability for one's dreams or for one's purpose, we can actually find ourselves identifying with the Netflix binges, living in the escapism of this that we get from these different series that we watch, or we're tweeting all the time, or we're on Instagram all the time, and we don't really realize that we're consuming our time with this stuff, and we say that we like this stuff, but what it actually is a coping mechanism that has attached itself to our lives and made it seem like it's a part of us, when in reality all it is it's just an escape from us feeling the pain of not accomplishing our singing dream, right? And this can be for a lot of different people, like I've said, but if you're watching this podcast, it's for you in terms of singing, right? And I don't want that for you, and this is why we're exposing these dangers, right? So those first 2 dangers have to do with just your coping mechanisms and thinking that the coping mechanisms are actually a part of you, when actually the real part of you wants to sing. The real part of you wants to use your voice, share your message, and allow people to be transformed by just a vulnerable human being sharing what's the best of them, sharing even the worst of them, like just being vulnerable and sharing their human experience through music, right? We want that, but when we don't get that, and we numb ourselves to our singing dream and the pain of not getting that, we go to coping mechanisms. right? Which brings me to the third danger of when we numb ourselves to our singing dream. We forget what it's like to dream. You forget what it's like to dream, because and I learned this in my own little bout with, not little, but my own bout with depression. When you numb yourself to the pain of life, you also numb yourself to the joys of life. I'll say it again. When you numb yourself to the pain of life, you also numb yourself to the joys of life. When you numb yourself so that you don't feel the pain, you actually exit the opportunity to actually feel the greatest joys of life at the same time. Because you can't numb yourself selectively. It's either you go numb completely or you're not numb at all, right? And you don't really realize it. And because, especially with what I was talking about before, we have a culture that loves to cope with itself, and also a culture that lacks a level of accountability when it comes to coping mechanisms. What we can do is we can just talk about the coping mechanisms all the time. And then when it comes, and because we've numbed ourselves to the dream so much, we forget what we actually want in life. We forget that singing is the thing that we've wanted. And because we've just, wrapped ourselves in the blanket of failure, right? And the blanket of, I guess this is just who I am. I guess I'm just not really called to this. We forget what the dream actually looks like. Right? And because we forget what the dream actually looks like, when it's time for us to actually pursue what we want, and there's actually more opportunities that present themselves, we just continue to wrap ourselves in the blanket of failure, as if we never had a dream, or we come up with dreams that aren't actually the real dream, right? And because we can be very materialistic, and I won't use capitalist, but yeah, basically very materialistic. What we'll do is we'll make the dream a house. We'll make the dream a car. We'll make the dream something that we can do, with our finances and with our money, to say, you know what, this is the direction that I want to go. And we end up making coping mechanisms out of material things that cost us money, right? And when we get to the top of, getting all of those different things, we end up realizing that the dream was all the way over there, and we never pursued it because we wrapped ourselves in the blanket of failure. And we just did something, and we bought something to actually say, oh yeah, I actually am super, super, super elated with my life, and I love my life, when in reality, you left the dream a long time ago, right? This is about waking up. This is about no longer living in the blanket of a coping mechanism, but actually awakening to the dream again, right? That's actually a little bit oxymoronic, awakening to the dream, but you get what I'm saying. Let's dream again, right? And this brings me to the fourth one. Now, there's a lot because a lot of people, there are a lot of people that aren't singing, that are numb to their dream, but there actually are also people that are singing that are also numb to the dream, because when singing is your career, and you have to, and that's what you have to do, sometimes the pain of life and the pain of not progressing the way that you want to can actually interfere with you actually being able to do what you love. And so what you do is you go numb, which brings me to the fourth point. You're singing, the fourth danger of numbing yourself to your singing dream is that your singing becomes an autopiloted experience that is robbed of its joy, right? Singing is at its most powerful when it's a joyful experience, not when it's a monotonous experience that's just like 5, 6, 7, 8, la 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 la. Like singing was never meant to be robotic. It's part of the reason why when a voice is auto-tuned or when it's digitized, there's a lack of it just lacks that little flavor. It just sounds robotic. Now I don't know, maybe that's a subjective statement, but that's what I've seen that a lot of people say when they hear a voice that's auto-tuned. Why do I say that? Because when we auto-tune our life, yeah, we're totally going there. I'm getting a little preachy. When we auto-tune our life, when we allow our singing, the joys and the pains of life as it relates to our singing to go numb, what we do is we put ourselves in robot mode, and we just create these artificial experiences, and we do things with our voices that we are comfortable with and that our audience is comfortable with, and so we'll get a response from the audience. But in reality, we're not satisfied with the fact that we're only singing to this open mic, the same open mic that we've been at for the last 3 years, or we still have, that small little YouTube audience that, hears your covers because you're not actually putting out any of your original music, right? And so what we do is, if we don't necessarily give up singing and go for the material things, and in fact we can still do the material things while still singing, but if we are still singing, it gets robbed of its joy. And when what we're passionate about gets robbed of its joy, the want to actually progress it dwindles more and more into a sense of nothingness, right? And I don't want that for you. So this is why we're awakening to the dream, right? Wow. So yeah, your singing becomes an piloted experience that is robbed of its joy. And that brings me to the last danger of numbing yourself to your singing dream, is that just the simple fact that you don't improve because there's nowhere to go. And I alluded to it in the last one. The reality is, when there is no dream, the Bible talks about it this way, where there's no vision, the people perish. Now, I'm probably taking that way out of context, but there is a sense of truth to it in terms of having a dream and a vision for your life. If you don't have a vision of where you want to go, there is nothing that is actually pulling you forward to actually progress. If you say, you want to be able to do a specific run, and you hear the run, and you practice and you practice and you practice, and you don't get that run after a little while, what you can do is you can just, okay, you know what? I'm not going to go for that at all. But what happens is, when we take away that end picture or that end vision, which in this case, this little example, it's a run, what happens is we don't have anything that's propelling us forward. And that can even be on a more macro level when it comes to doing that album, right? You've had that album in the works for so long, but because you felt like an album couldn't actually be done, and so what you did is you just you aborted the dream. Doing songs and doing individual songs, it's just like, I don't need to do 12 songs. I'll just do one, because that's just what I can do right now, right? What I'm really saying is just that you will not improve and you will not progress if you have nowhere to go. And if you do not have a dream, and if you've numbed yourself to the dream, you've eliminated all possibilities for you, or you've eliminated the one thing that is actually going to help to propel you forward. And the reason why you eliminated it is simply to numb yourself to the pain of not progressing, right? And when you don't progress, it's not supposed to be that you're supposed to use that as an indicator to give up, but it's supposed to be an indicator that you're supposed to actually get help, right? There's only a certain amount of things that we can do by ourselves, right? And especially in this society, we want to be self-made, we want to do it all by yourself. But the reality is, a good singer and a good artist is not created on their own, right? There is a sense of people that will guide the artist to actually being who they want to be. And for you as a singer that has numbed yourself to the dream, right, it is time for you to actually get that help. So what I want you to do is actually book a voice breakthrough call with me, so that we can actually discuss this pain that you've been numbing for so long, and actually talk about what it would take to actually get you to where you want to be. So I want you to book a call with me, book a voice breakthrough call with me at reclaimyourvoice.ca/call, and let's have a conversation. Because the reality is, if you are numbing yourself to your dream, to your singing dream, and you are born to be a singer, you are a walking zombie and you have no life in you, right? We want to get that life back. We want to get that fire in your eyes, that passion in your eyes back. You want everyone that's around you to be able to talk to you and say, you know what, Candice, you look absolutely different. Kyle, you look absolutely different. Rashawn, you look so different because I can see the fire in your eyes again. You know that fire has been lost for a very long time. And so what I want you to do is book a call with me at reclaimyourvoice.ca/call, and let's get you out of the numbness and actually into reality so that you can actually progress to where you want to be, right? And because again, you can't do it by yourself, but I'm here so that we can help to do this together. Okay? So I want you to book that call with me at reclaimyourvoice.ca/call. And I also want you to subscribe to this podcast. I'm loving the conversation that we're having here because we're all about reclaiming your voice, reclaiming my voice. Anyway, I'm O'Neal Gerald Donald, and I'll see you guys encounter you guys in another episode. Okay? You guys have a wonderful day. Bye.